Hello, good sir. How are you?
Hey, man. I'm great. I'm great. That's it. Period.
I mean, most people say, "Oh, how are you?" But like, you're extremely rude, so it's standard.
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm refreshed. I'm
Yeah.
refreshed, and we're gonna get into why, and I'm sure we're gonna talk about tons of different stuff. But I just got back from Grasslands National Park, which is in Saskatchewan, which is a province in Canada. For all our American listeners, if you don't know what a province is, it's a state, pretty much, since you guys are in your own world there.
Wow. Rude. Off the
Yeah,
bat.
rude right back. Sorry. Not sorry. Just got back from there and was there for a week. Landscape it's just north of Montana. It borders Montana in the northern part of Montana and the southern part of Saskatchewan. Beautiful rolling hills and authentic grassland prairies. Whole lot of nothing, but at the same time, a whole lot of something, if that makes any sense at all. Lots of wildlife opportunities. I got tons of good footage of bison, some pheasants, some awesome birds, burrowing owls, endangered prairie dogs, prairie rattlesnakes.
Ooh.
Filmed so much grass. And the best part we're going to talk about today, and it's going to lead to so many different topics, how this can boost your creativity. And I think I mentioned to you before we started, we're going to talk about this theme, but I've had from maybe 3 to 4 different sources, a book I'm reading, a podcast I was listening to. You sent me a video from Mark Groves. Maybe we'll talk about today for people who know who that is. All around this kind of theme of getting back to kind of like our ancestral roots, nature, living for today. We're going to avoid being cliche and corny today, but wow, do I ever feel more energized, more enthusiastic about life, more creative. I edited some photos for the first time in probably 3 months today, and I loved it. The time flew.
Yeah.
And this particular place where I was for 7 days, Grasslands National Park in Saskatchewan, I was forced to have no cell service, which meant no Instagram, which meant God knows what's going on with the podcast here. Hopefully all the episodes came out smoothly. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't hear from loved ones. I don't know if of course we have a sat phone, but don't know if they're in trouble. Kind of just forced to be in a strange place and forced to take everything in and not have distractions readily available, not to live somewhere else digitally. Beyond the social media stuff and communication, I'm someone who is always curious, not even the ability to get an immediate answer for something that I'm curious about. Having to read pamphlets about rattlesnakes.
That's funny.
Books. I went with Haley. Haley and I, we played Crazy Eights over dinner with a good old-fashioned deck of cards. And I'm sure you have lots of questions, and I'm sure you have lots of themes we can build off of. And I really want to talk about how this has been so good for me mentally and for my creativity. I just feel so good. And you know what? To end my monologue, all the brief periods of worry or minor anxiety, oh, I wonder if everyone's okay, or oh, I wonder if there's messages about the podcast. It all went fine. Everything was waiting for me when I got back. Right?
Yeah.
And life's not so helter-skelter. Maybe it's a lot simpler than we've set it out to be. I'm reading a book right now. I'll reference it for those on YouTube. Subscribe to YouTube, by the way. Congrats on over 200 subs, Aaron. You're doing an awesome job with the channel.
Thank
I'm reading
you.
a book here. Can you see that?
Yeah. Civilized to Death.
Civilized to Death. Which I guess the title explains a lot.
The price
basically
of progression.
is all our the price of progress.
Progress. Gotcha.
Is all this advancement and more specifically civilization in the last few thousand years, the advent of agriculture. It's advancement, but is it good for us? It's really gotten me thinking. I don't agree with everything the author Christopher Ryan has to say, but I think the purpose for me of reading is just to get myself thinking about things. And really the thesis of the book is, are we going backwards while things seemingly advance? And I call it, is it time to get back to the garden, outside, feet on earth, out of our phones, into real life? I've said so many times on this podcast, I think we're becoming a new species where tech will be integrated into us. It's probably inevitable. Is it good for us? I don't know. I think there's an ancestral need, at our roots, at our core, to participate in the world, the real world, not Instagram land and even just Googling stuff. So this is probably the third time I've said I'll end my monologue, but I'll let you go from there.
That's good. It's well said. There's a lot of things we can go off of there for sure. And maybe a good spot is sort of the transition in terms of from phone to no phone for a week, and kind of day 1 to day 7 where you're at, and then maybe putting it into practice and things we can do where the choice is ours versus a little bit forced, right? Like you're in a place with no service. You have no real choice. You chose to go there, but you had to kind of deal with the consequences of like, well, I'm not going to have my phone. I'm not going to have internet. I'm not going to have my email. I'm not going to be able to check on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get my ducks in a row and just see what happens, really. Like kind of just hopefully things are taken care of, but there's nothing I can really do, so I'm not going to worry about it. And I think that's an interesting place to be. I think when it's forced, it's easier than when you have to make a choice and it's available.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about before, like going to the Adirondacks where you lose service and you're like, it might be annoying for a little bit, but you get pretty used to it. Like, oh, okay, well, the phone can just kind of sit here because there's nothing I can do with it. And you kind of, I don't know, when it's forced, it might come a little faster. So I'm just curious, your journey from like day 1, the airport, kind of saying goodbye, signing off, and then to day 7, like where you're at.
Well, first of all, I think there's a lot of self-insight here. When people were asking me prior to departure what I was looking most forward to, and almost without hesitation, I think every single time I said, I'm looking forward to being off grid. It wasn't, I'm looking forward to filming bison, although I did do that and it was a blast. It wasn't, I'm looking forward to backcountry camping, kind of really participating in the elements. Those were all great, and I definitely things I was looking forward to. But the first thing that came to mind was, I'm looking forward to being inaccessible entirely. And I like to ask the question why a lot, as you know, as listeners know. And I think that's a really important question for me to ask. Why was I looking so forward to that? Is it just burnout due to current circumstances? Is it, like I was mentioning, this just innate desire to get back to what seemingly should be life? And day 1, day 2, I'll honestly say I did not miss it at all. The thing I missed maybe the most was when I had a question and I didn't have instant access to an answer. Right? As much as I love this community, I love chatting with you, I love my friends, I love my family, it was nice to wonder, for there to be a space to think about people. And I think, again, that has insight for me too. I constantly, maybe every single day, caught myself wondering about family and friends. And that says a lot. I think you would agree.
Yeah, I can jump in with like just a funny anecdotal. I work in a school. You work with, wherever you work with probably a bunch of colleagues, and you might not be their best friends, but I've caught myself many times being like, "How was your weekend?" And you're explaining your weekend, and they're like, "Yeah, I saw your story." And you're like, "Oh, like
You saw
there's
15 seconds of my weekend.
yeah." But at the same time, like they already know the story I'm telling. So if you reverse engineer that, a lot of times we might see our friends like, oh, they're at a concert, they're having fun, or oh, they're shooting this. They're like, I don't need to check in, right? Like it's connected, but it's disconnected. And I've always noticed that with social media, like. So you're saying without the connection, you're wondering more about you miss, you want to reach out, you want to actually connect. Whereas maybe if you have the ability to connect or you see all about them all the time, there isn't such a need to connect because you're like, oh, I see what they're doing today. Cool. Next, like next story, next. Like you just kind of move through life pretty quickly and
Right.
you feel caught up. You feel caught up with that buddy or that family member, but maybe you're not quite there. Maybe it's disconnect through the illusion of connecting.
Right. It's not deep.
No.
It's very shallow. And I also caught myself many times looking at a scene and thinking, this person would love this. Or that's a cool animal. My mom would love to be here right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't think there's really much more to say on the topic. I just think it aligned a lot of priorities for me. I mean, I know these, I feel like I'm pretty confident in my order of priorities and what's important to me, but reminders are always great.
Right.
The other thing you mentioned was the forcedness of that lack of connection and how there was nothing I could do if something did go wrong. Like if I made an error, put the wrong advertisement on our podcast, or something just went wrong. I don't know. There was nothing I could do. And I was actually listening to a podcast today, Dr. Alyssa Epple on the Human Lab podcast. She brought up a really good point about as humans, we try so hard to predict everything and feel like we're in control and feel like we know what's coming. And certain people are really good at thriving in unexpected moments, and others can't do it as well. And it's a great source of stress. And I think realizing that we really don't control shit.
Not one damn thing.
Not one damn thing. So
We really
why worry ourselves to death? Why worry? Like, as you mentioned, there's absolutely nothing I can do if something's wrong back home. So I may as well enjoy now. I may as well have fun. I may as well spend my time making things happen other than waiting for potentially bad news or a potential stressor to come my way. I think the ability to, and I don't necessarily have a recipe for this. Wish I did. But the ability to get really comfortable accepting that you don't know what the hell is coming your way and knowing that some real tidal wave bad times are inevitable and being okay with accepting that you're kind of just you're on this floating rock and you don't have much control within, outside of your day to day. Maybe you have a routine, but that's not the same thing. And it's very freeing to go, well, what can I do about it? What can I do about it? I've caught myself at times worrying at night, like, oh my God, this is just a weird example, but what if I get a terminal illness in my 30s or something? Because you see it happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly healthy people, terminal diagnosis, you're like, oh my God, that could be me. And you have this almost like irrational worry. I don't know if people have had this thought as well, or if you have, or if I'm just odd. But the real reality is like, what are you going to do about it? And I think carrying that concept throughout life is very freeing and liberating and allows you to focus on what's going on right in front of you.
Yeah. And, And I think in your example, you're on a trip, say you did have service and you did have a cell phone and someone was able to call you with like an emergency, God forbid, whoever, if a
Mhm.
family member passed away or is in the emergency room, it, as much as we want to know the information as soon as possible and feel like we can have I think the illusion of control, it's really out of our control. We're not the ER doctors that are going to be there. We're not there. There's nothing that we could do if we were there right now to help the situation, except potentially just be there for our own needs, whatever those are. And when you're away, and when someone like you said, it's accepting the fact that there's nothing you can do except try to enjoy the moment that you're in and deal with things that come along or across your plate or across your table as they come, and do the best that you can with that information, with the sadness, with the grief, with the, getting through it, whatever it may be. But the reality is there's just nothing that can change by you getting an early text or phone call when you're across the country or even down the street sometimes. We like to think there is. We like to think we need to know right now. But in reality, like nature and life and health and whatever, makes no excuses, makes no pardons for anyone. It just kind of, it can hit at any time. And accepting, I think, that fate, that things are impermanent, and not to get depressing on the show, geez, but it's just kind of the way it is. When you accept, there is a freeing release of like, okay, like I wow, I accept that impermanence. I accept the philosophy that nothing stays here, nothing lasts forever. Okay, then I can allow it to happen, you know? And
Right.
by maybe losing some of that tether, like that phone, the connection to internet, the connection to news all the time, the connection to the social media feed, seeing all these things pop up, the overstimulation of our brain, maybe we can be in those moments a little bit better versus feeling like we do have control. We do need to know right now. That does change things, when in actuality, it kind of doesn't.
Right. It's like a fallacy. I mean, it's no wonder anxiety levels are so high. I mean, I don't know this for
Oh,
sure,
wow.
but I'm sure if you look at diagnoses of generalized anxiety disorder and the birth of social media, I bet you those are positively correlated.
Yeah, 2013, huge. I know this.
You do know
2013,
this.
huge spike in mental illness and anxiety, depression. Very huge correlation with the forward facing camera and internet in the palm of your hand.
Yeah. I actually read a stat that I think it's one in, I don't want to butcher this. I'll do the Joe Rogan where we have our assistant say, actually check that after I say a
Check that.
fact.
Yeah, 99%.
So before I do that, a large percentage of children and adolescents are being diagnosed with myopia from just constantly looking at items up close.
I'm not
The
surprised.
plasticity of the brain is seeing no point in long distance vision.
Hmm.
Isn't that wild?
Wild. Wild.
Anyways, so didn't miss the phone once. Was not looking forward, severely not looking forward in the final days to turning it on. I usually let family member know I'm boarding my flight, should be back. You can, if you ever, next time you talk to Haley, I was like, I don't want to turn this on, Haley. I don't want to go back. I don't
Yeah.
want to go back to society. I have quote fingers for,
Yeah.
not because I'm not appreciative of all the wonders of the modern world, but I just felt home. I felt like maybe we're making our time here way more complicated than it is. I mean, maybe the point is to just have fun and fart around. You ever thought of this?
Yes.
maybe it's not leaving a giant legacy. Maybe it's not
Yes.
creating a 6-figure business.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's playing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's having fun.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because I think, listen, we're all here. Seth and I come every week and we talk about often, like, what strategic moves can we do? What guests can we take? What topics, what titles do we use? What thumbnails do we are cognizant. It's fun. It's a fun game to unwind. I think there's just a very delicate balance, and you just hit it. And it's always something that I think about, is like, the bottom line is, you and I once a week, sometimes more, get together and we chat as if we were friends. Of course, it's more focused than maybe friends just chatting around a fire. We have
Right.
a topic. We might invite a guest. We try to dig deep, but ultimately, it's us chatting and then doing a little bit of work to make this show public and put it out to our fans, people that want to listen to it. Hopefully, people get stuff from it. I think with all businesses, with all things, it's very easy to get away from where was the initial joy that this was or this is, and get into the metrics, the let's look at the analytics. Let's look at what our people are researching and then tailor our videos to what they want to see. It can get away from you very quickly, where I feel like you can lose your sense of, why was I here in the first place? And to me, we shared this video. Mark Groves has a podcast, Create the Love. It's a relationship podcast. It's about not just romantic relationships, but dealing with people, a bunch of stuff. I do recommend it. I think there's a lot of good stuff from that podcast. But he recently was like, I'm going to get away from Instagram, and he was very grateful. He showed a lot of gratitude for the social media space, but pointed out a lot of things that I felt personally, like listening to that, I was like, he mentioned, like, this has been tugging at my soul and my heart for a long time. And I was like, I kind of feel that. I kind of feel that sort of tugging, where when you first get into an art form, photography, videography, any sort of art form, to be able to share it and to be able to have people comment on it and like it and follow you is incredibly rewarding, for sure. But there becomes a game, and with Meta and Instagram and all YouTube, with TikTok, there is sort of a game where it's like, okay, what kind of art works the best? And it's hard not to, even not on purpose, start to shift away from your true love to what does better, in the hope that it funnels people back to your art. But you're too busy shaping your content to, in the hopes that people will come back to your art. There's not enough time to do your art. And that's a big thing that I've been thinking of, like, literally have had this conversation with myself. Like, I can edit a photo and post it. I really like this photo. Nah, it's not going to do well. Maybe I should do a funny reel instead. So now I'm going away from the art that I started and the art that I loved to, let me try to make a reel that gets a lot of attention, that then sees my art. It's like this magical circle I'm trying to create.
It's a paradox in a sense.
But
Hearing you describe it.
It leaves, I think it can leave you kind of empty. It can leave you kind of feeling like, this is not what I want to be doing. This is not the music I want to be writing. This is not the photos I want to be presenting. This is not the video I want to kind of do. I don't want a video in vertical. That's ridiculous. I want to make my videos horizontal. That's how movies are. That's what I want to do. But I'm forced in a way. Of course, I don't have to do any of that. And I guess that becomes the choice. That becomes the dichotomy in your brain of, like, what am I doing and what do I want to do? Where do I want to go with any of this stuff? And is it creating joy? Do I need a break? Do I need to give some space? Do I need to, whatever it may be? I just think it's worth the conversation, and stepping away, forced or not forced. I think there is some value to that. And one final thought: the more that I think about these things, I've been personally thinking about, like, let's step away from Instagram for a while. Like, let's take a month off, a 2-month thing off. And I've been thinking that for a long time, and I haven't done it. So the question then becomes, okay, is there some sort of addiction to this whole thing? Is there some sort of dependence on this? Is there some sort of anxious attachment towards social media and the feeling I'm going to miss out, or someone's going to message me, or whatever it may be? I might miss a viral post if I don't do it the way I want to. Where is that line for me? And finding that sort of peace in terms of, like, okay, if you need a break, you can take one, but at the same time balancing the needs of the podcast, the needs of clients that I'm working with. It doesn't go over maybe great if you're like, hey, I'm not posting any of this on my social media. I'm just, I just take pictures, or whatever it may be. Like, there's whether that's a fake dialogue or not, there's a pressure to keep going with this game. And I don't like that. I don't like that. I'm a Sagittarius. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being trapped. I say that in jest,
That's
but
satire, I hope.
yes, it is. But that part does ring true in terms of, like, I just, that part sort of has been on my mind for months at this point. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? And back to the point, and I will shut up after that, is that the weekly conversations, that's the why. That's the conversations that we do and we put out. That's the fun part. I look forward. As soon as I don't look forward to our Monday or Tuesday get-togethers where we're going to talk about a thing, then it's a problem. When that becomes a drag, then it's a problem. But as long as I can show up to the microphone, I might be tired, I might be sick or getting over a cold or super busy, but beyond that, like, I'm always here and you're always here, and we're always kind of like, let's do this. And the hour goes by super fast. And when we hang up, I know we're both like, that was pretty good. That was fun. That was nice to catch up. That was a good conversation,
Right.
And that is the bottom line. Whether we put it out or not, like, I think we would keep doing that.
Yeah. You bring up a good point of rewinding 4 years ago. And I think in the short amount of episodes where you weren't part of the show when I started it, what the reason for that was. And I wanted to create something that I didn't feel existed, which was, I felt kind of lost in my life, I think. I felt like I didn't have I didn't really know who I was, and I wanted to be a better version of myself, and I didn't know how. And I saw myself as a creative person. There was none of that, like, self-loathing stuff. I just felt like I had more potential and I had the ability to do better. And I wanted to tie in the ideas of mindset with improving creativity, but not from the place, even 4 years later now, not from the place of being an expert. I don't know if this is the same for you, but I also feel like a lot of successful podcasters, people who run businesses, content creators, photographers who we look up to would say the same thing, that this has been an experiment in personal growth for me. I approach every week where I sit down with you, where I sit down with a guest, as a student. Like, I feel I'm a student every week. So in a selfish way, this is for me. I'm getting an education, either from, or a free therapy session, or whatever you want to call it, either from the thoughts that come from something you say, maybe just something that a guest says. I learn every single week as a student, even though I'm the co-host. Apologies.
No, it's fine.
And I think the point for me has never been to tell people, I know what I'm talking about. I'm great. You should listen to me. Like we see so many other people doing. And I don't want to virtue signal here. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, alongside you, and I'm super grateful for you. You know how hard it is to find a business partner who's excited to show up every single week, that you have chemistry with, that has the same level of drive and work ethic? Fucking needle in a haystack.
Impossible. Nearly impossible.
So I want it to be here's my experience of life as a creator, like you are listening. And maybe you can relate. Maybe you think the total opposite of what I'm saying. Good, right? Good. If it gets people thinking about stuff, even listening to this episode, oh, I feel really anxious. I feel like I'm always on my phone. I don't feel connected to the earth. I don't feel like I don't feel here and now. Maybe this story about me not having my phone for a week is something that makes your life better. Not because I'm an expert or know what I'm talking about. It's just through chats like this, I'm so grateful for that so many different topics arise, and maybe it gets people thinking in a different kind of way that improves their life. Right? So getting back to, I think maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, we were talking about how maybe the point of all this is to have fun and fart around and to not take everything so seriously, which I do that sometimes. Like I take things very seriously. I'm a very driven person. I would consider myself type A. I want to get things done. I like seeing progress. I like seeing qualitative metrics go up. I like seeing this show succeed. Whatever, I mean, that definition changes all the time. But there needs to be a balance where I can step back and be like, hey, it's okay to just chill out and go have fun. I mean, even the fact that we haven't missed an episode for 4 years, weekly episode, I'm really proud of that streak. But it's also alarming to me that it scares me missing a week.
Yeah.
Because I'm so committed to being consistent. But is that too rigid? I mean, this trip that I'm talking about has made me ask a lot of these difficult questions and has forced me to kind of self-critique, because I'm far from perfect, right? And I just remember one morning getting up and filming a bison. I had woken up, gotten out of the tent, and I saw it was a ways off and it started meandering a certain direction. And how you, after a good amount of experience with wildlife, you can kind of tell what direction and what pace they're heading and where you should maybe go stand.
Mm-hmm.
So went and stood where I thought this beautiful bison was going to stand or walk towards. And sure enough, it stopped maybe 50, 40 yards from me. And it just sat there and ate. And I remember filming and thinking to myself, this is so much fun. I'm not thinking about this is going to perform so well. I'm going to edit it for Tamron and I was just having fun pressing record. And I remember thinking to myself, I could sit here for 8 hours and fill 10 memory cards with the nuances of the wind, the expressions of the animals. And I just, knowing myself, when I get lost like that, I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. That's how I know. And like you said, when things become a drag over time, if I was like, ugh, that's a really good opportunity to film a bison, I should probably go. It would be good for my portfolio and career. I'm in the wrong fucking ball game. Like, it's time to step away or rethink, what else do I want to do with life? Like, what else do I want to explore? Because right now, this ain't it. But I know when it's just, I'm having fun, and it's as simple as that. I'm having fun. The episode we did with Jason Loftus a few weeks back, one of our best performing episodes. And I say performing in terms of how it was received, people writing about it, some metrics. It sounds like people, and the title of that episode was How to Make Photography Fun Again. It sounds like a lot of people, I can assume or presume rather, from how well that episode did, that maybe some people are just like really lost with this. And it's okay to get lost. I mean, you're going to get lost in anything, not in the good way. But
yeah,
I think just to finish up, I just think the relationship and it ties into what you said. Why did you start this? I mean, it's okay for things to manifest into other things. I mean, we had our meeting for our Alaska retreat last night with our attendees, and I was sitting there thinking like, holy shit. This started from an idea in a basement to start a podcast, and now we're running trips to the coolest places on earth. And I just kind of sat there like, holy shit.
Mhm.
That's cool. It's terrifying. It's everything. It's fun. But why did I start it in the beginning? I think is always a good question to ask yourself, because it's the foundation, it's the root, it's the core, and you build out from there.
Yes, man. A lot of amens to all of that. I think if I can reflect for a second too, getting into this whole thing and game, I look at that. I just said it to a teacher at work. She's like, any trips this summer? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Alaska. Like, I'm hosting a trip for people. It's like this little camera has gotten me a lot of cool experiences. When you step back and you really look at the reasons and the experiences and the memories and the future projections without getting too far ahead of yourself, it's like, this is pretty cool that this whole thing has occurred. And I want to always enjoy that. Like, I want to always be like, yeah, like, look at this little camera and look what it's done for me. I want to always feel that sort of wonder and amazement with this hobby. Call it a hobby, call it a passion, call it whatever you want. It's been incredible. And I think part of the game, but it should be a minor part. Social media is part of the world. We talk about it a lot. Our episodes that talk about it tend to do well too. People care. People want to do well on social media. But I challenge us to take a step back and remember why. Like, why we wanted to do well on social media, why we wanted to share things, probably because of the excitement of it ourselves and feeling like, oh, other people are going to love this photo. And getting that sort of validation, which is fine. That's very human to get external validation that you're on the right path with things. We do it in every arena of our lives. We have to have our own conviction as well. And I think that's the part that we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose the conviction of the happiness of seeing the grass blow in a certain way, or the bison moving, the ability to take 8 hours of footage and understand, like, I'm not going to probably do much with this footage.
Right.
It's 8 hours of footage. Like, I'm just enjoying being here and capturing moments and having the memories. And I'll go through it at some other time. It's one of those things. Like, I think you can get really caught up in the other side. Every good thing has a shadow side, and I think definitely this podcast, social media, photography, hosting retreats, like, there all could be like this shadow side of it, where you're trying to do things for the wrong reasons potentially, or things that don't really move your soul, don't really make you happy, don't really, at the end of the day, you go like, that was a good day. I don't camera.
Do you write your wins down?
I do mentally.
What are they usually? Because that says a lot too about what's important.
I think, to me, I've always been, and no matter what I'm doing, whether it's music, golf, photography, teaching at school, dealing with kids, relationships, being a father, training a dog, like, whatever it is, I always look at this big picture sort of life connection thing. I mean, just the other day, I had a really nice golf round, not to brag, but I did. And it's the first one in a long time. But what I walk away with from that golf round is like the amazement of, oh, the connections to life are just paramount. They're just huge. They're just these like amazing little connections that are such life lessons in a 4-hour, 5-hour round of golf. Just the mindset, the ability to stay in a moment, the ability to not get too excited, the ability to not push, the ability to not force it, the ability to just kind of flow through my round and have things happen and not get nervous because it's doing well. Just like keep going, keep gently pressing on the gas, gently. And it's like such a balance between like, oh, I need to floor it. We're not doing well enough. Like, oh, I just bogeyed it. I need to do better on the next one versus like one shot at a time. What's the best shot for this moment?
Yeah, that's a great point.
And when you stay in that sort of zone, when you stay in that sort of flow, you end the round. And I always say 18 holes is like a lifetime. When you end your life and you look back and you go like, wow, I stayed in it. I didn't get outside of myself to try to force a situation. I am very pleased with how it went. And I happened to score well. I happened to actually make putts. I could have easily missed putts and still played the same amount of like skill, except you just don't score. You hit the ball well, you just don't score. So it's like everything kind of goes together and you're not forcing it. It's the same with photography. Like wildlife moments are weird. They're very weird to me. It's a whole timing thing. It's a whole like, oh, if I got up a little bit earlier, like I said I was, then I would have missed this moment because I was late, because I parked here, then I rushed. Like this all, like it all unfolds. And if you let it, sometimes we've all been there where like, I'm going to stay another 20 minutes. I'm going to say I got to go home, but I got to stay another 20 minutes. And then something happens. Like it just seemingly unfolds in a weird sort of magical way to me, wildlife. Photography especially. So all those moments I think are just, the reason and the takeaways that I get from all this stuff. And going through it, there are moments, I'm not perfect, where I start to force. I start to feel like, I got to keep posting. Oh, I got to keep doing things. Oh, I gotta to keep up. You start comparing yourself to other people. You start seeing these incredible images. You start seeing,
and then there's a shame that comes with it too, though.
And we all know that shame is a pretty big emotional deterrent and tax on our our well-being. Let's call it that. Versus being able to be out there without any comparison. Dude, here's a perfect example. You love your buffalo moment. You're taking photos, you're taking video, you're sitting there, you're in a prairie, it's quiet. There's no cell service, there's no notifications, there's no dings. And
you want to go back.
You're 10 out of 10 happy in terms of your content.
Yeah. With
service, you go on Instagram, you're ready to post. Holy shit, here's a buffalo in a freaking snowstorm with like oh God, that picture's fucking great. Fuck. It was just boring. Like there is that, like you were at a point and the comparison just knocks you down.
And where my headspace goes to that moment was in your, let's break this down for maybe people who would have a maladaptive thought process here. My thought process, which I think is a healthy one, goes to, I can't create a snowstorm. I was given what I was given. And with my current ability and skill set and experience, I captured the scene and scenes, different angles, different focal lengths, different orientations to the best of my ability.
Right.
I'm not filming for Blue Planet, for Frozen Planet. I filmed to the best of my ability, and that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's good enough. I don't know who needs to hear that, but if you were filming, shooting, doing anything to the best of your current ability, good on you. Then what you do is you go back and you see that kind of content with the one in the snowstorm or just something that was maybe filmed better in the example we're using. And oh, okay. Next time, that's how I elevate my potential or my skill set.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did. That's learning. That's healthy consumption.
Yeah.
Not, theirs is way better. Mine's not even worth posting. I had a young lad message me on Instagram in high school. And he said something, I'm paraphrasing. He said something along the lines of like, hey, I live in a small town, ironically in Saskatchewan. Can you tell me if my photos are any good? Something along those lines. And first of all, I was flattered, imposter syndrome. And then I went to his page and there's 0 posts. And I said, you don't have any photos up. I said, how am I supposed to offer any critique, which good for you that you've put yourself out there to ask. That takes courage.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, I'm afraid to share them because I live in a small town where everybody knows each other and I'm afraid of what people will think. And my heart just sank for this young kid. It's not his fault, right? And he sent me the pictures and they were great. I said, man, these are way better than what I shot when I was 16. Go back and look at my first photos. If they're even still there, if I haven't archived them or deleted them from shame at the time.
Right.
And I said to him, I said, if I can offer you one piece of advice, man, I know this is unsolicited, but stop caring. You do you. And then I said, let me ask you this. And I allowed some space for him to answer. I said, what is the absolute worst thing that's going to happen if you post these photos? He said, oh, I never thought of it that way. I said, what's the absolute best thing that happens? And it was, well, people who care about me get to enjoy my artwork and support me. I said, what are you waiting for?
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes to show that there's this on the topic of, it comes down to, I'm not good enough. I'm not enough.
Yeah.
And to come full circle to the internet thing, if you feel that way, take a break. You don't need to fly to the grasslands and force yourself out of service. Put the phone, put it on airplane mode. It's going to do wonders for your creativity. You'll shoot what you want to shoot. You'll shoot to the best of your ability. Another thing that was happening with me is I was going to bed when I was tired and I was waking up when I was fully energized. Sometimes that was when the sun was still out. I can't remember the last time that happened where it wasn't like a set schedule or it's 10, better start winding down. Obviously I had a watch, but I just went with it. Like you're talking about, you go with it. I'm not in control of my circadian rhythm to an extent. Like let's participate, right? And let's chill out a bit. It's to oversimplify, like it's going to be okay. You know, I'm not saying substitute in total apathy where you just expect good things to happen to you. But like you said, press on the gas a little bit, just a little touch and just kind of keep that momentum. You don't need to floor it and end up in a bunker. And one more thing, I know you're eager to talk.
No, yeah, go.
You said something really good when you were talking about the golf analogy. I know people who have been on the show for a long time. Maybe we've lost listeners because you talk about golf so much. I'm just kidding.
That's fine. We have our crowd then, you know?
Great point.
We don't do it for the audience.
Another great point. Not everyone's going to like us. So you said in that you attributed your really good golf round to focusing on what do I need to do right now with this shot? Maybe you're in the sand, maybe you're in long grass. Like, what do I need to do right now? I don't care about the next hole, how far I need to drive the ball next hole. What do I need to do right now? And I actually had a one-on-one session with a good lad the other day. If you're interested in those, we'll put the link in the episode description here on YouTube and in the and on streaming. We're doing a thing right now where I have it set up just for me. 30 minutes free, your first time, one-time use. So if you wanted to do a portfolio review or have some work done on a pitch, just some help with anything photography related, you get your first half hour for free.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah. So this particular person was, struggling to like feeling like they needed to do everything. Oh, I'm a really good writer, so I should work on my blog and my website. Oh, I really need to start making income in this area, so I need to build a portfolio. Like kind of trying to do everything at once and build each thing up a little bit at each time, as opposed to let's get this batch of what I need to get done and working in order linearly. It just made me think of what you're saying. Like, what do I need to do right now? And then I'll do the next thing next, and then the next thing after that, and then after that, and it will come together sequentially to get me to my outcome. I think I feel like a lot of us as creators are very sporadic and we're all over the place, ADHD maybe a bit, and that's natural, but it can hurt us, right? We got to try and I feel like work in a linear way, and that's me talking to myself.
Yeah. I think, again, a lot of great points. I feel like the tone of this podcast has been kind of like, I don't want to say somber. That's not the right, but just like a lot of good realizations and reflections, right? And sometimes reflections are like, I've gone down the wrong path a little. Let me correct, you know? And again, in that golf round, I was correcting myself many times. Like there's a moment, and not to brag again, this is a outlandish golf round. I don't do this often, but it was fun for me. So I'm going to talk about it. But I had 3 birdies in a row, and it was very hard to stay in the moment. Like you get, it's just like if one of our podcasts went absolutely viral and bonkers, it would be very hard to not be like, well, why'd that happen? What are the metrics? What are the title? And like freaking out and try to replicate it. And I think the counter to that would be like, just do what you're doing, which is I'm hitting one shot at a time as best that I can. And it's turning out okay. I'm not going to this needs to be an award-winning photograph before I take the picture. That's putting a lot of pressure on the situation. It's just staying in there and catching yourself in these moments and taking it back to the podcast. Hey, we're meeting every week. We're trying to have a good conversation for me and you. And we're stepping away going like, oh, well, for the audience that doesn't know this or hasn't picked up on it, Seth and I we have a lot of things in common, but we're very different in how we operate. And I think it makes for a good chemistry. It makes for some good conversation. There is an overlap, but he just admitted he's a little more type A and like, let's make things, let's go, let's pump. And I'm a little bit more like, I think it's going well.
You have your moments.
Yeah, I have my moments.
You
for
have
sure.
Bursts. And then I sometimes press the gas too hard, and then I'm like, I need to crawl in a hole.
Yeah, so we balance each other, I think, pretty well, and we're good at catching each other when when our minds go a little bit awry. We're like, whoa, we call each other out, and I think it's in a very nice, good relationship sort of way. But I think the bottom line being is that we come to this show saying, like, hey, let's have a good conversation for an hour, and go from there.
Right.
And things are going well. Great. Let's keep doing what we're doing and enjoying it. Let's not force something. Let's not keep trying to add to it to force it, because again, it comes to a point where it's like, all right, who was I doing this for? The audience or for us or for and it's a mix of everything, of course, but ultimately everything that we're doing, I kind of believe that everyone's somewhat selfish in everything that they pursue. There is some sort of reflective, like, what's this mean for me? Or how's this going to reflect for me? How's this going to make me look in some sense? So of course we enjoy this. If we didn't enjoy it, we wouldn't pursue it. And I guess to bring that to, no internet or no social media.
Yeah. Wrap it up here. What's the takeaway?
What the takeaway is, just be careful. Be careful with the approach. Be careful with catch yourself. It's like a relationship with social media, with your phone, with internet, with the tether that you have to your friends, your family, your society. Is that creating a sense that you feel uplifted, or do you feel stressed from it? Do you feel anxious from it? Do you feel anxiety? Do you feel panic? Do you feel like you're missing something? Do you feel like you need to be attached to someone all the time or to the Instagram all the time because you will miss something, or you might miss a comment, or you might miss someone else's post that mentions you? And you like, there's a million different ways you can take that. So make sure that you're just in touch with, and you can always we can always dive into a little bit of the, I'm going to try to work the algorithm. I'm going to try something. That's creativity. That's all our brains. I commend you for trying different things and doing different things, but don't lose touch of the 8 hours filming bison and just watching the wind blow, because that's what you truly love, and that's what you started doing, and that's your peace, and that's your whatever it may be. You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
right now I'm in an interesting situation of the podcast, working for clients, like very busy. There's not a lot of time to do the thing that started me with this, which was landscape and wildlife. There's just really not a lot of time to do it. And I'm looking so forward to Alaska, where it's
Yeah.
dedicated time to do landscape and wildlife photography, where I can't be at the computer. I can't meet with clients. I can't do things for everything else. It's like a week of solace where I can be like, this is why I'm here, and have those photos. I go back to Jasper and Banff photos all the time and be like,
Mm-hmm.
what do I want to edit now? And take me back to that moment, take me back to those experiences, because that's the true love of the situation.
Yeah, those photos are eternal, right?
Right.
I think one last piece I'll add to it. If you're someone who's really resonated with this episode, I want to tell you it's okay to step away. You don't need to, if you feel you really need it, even if that's temporary. You don't need to put shame on yourself for doing that. You are not less worthy of love and respect. It's it's okay.
Yeah, it is. The world keeps going, and you might find something new without it. You might find a sense of peace. You might find oh, this is good to do every couple of weeks, months, what have you, to take a week on your own, 2 weeks on your
Yeah.
own. It's like with diet or exercise, like no one can train for a marathon all year round. You need to rest. No one can
Without
eat a
getting hurt.
certain, yeah. I mean, you need to, sometimes it's good to have like a reset. Like, I want to eat just really well for 2 months, like really, really well for 2 months, and see how that feels. And then I can work things back in. I can have fun. I can live. Sure, I can experiment, but it's sometimes good to just kind of test where is your threshold. Is it really hard to step away from Instagram? I can admit that, yes, for me, it is hard. If you were to say quit right now, I'd give you 1,000 excuses why I couldn't just erase my entire profile. But it is an interesting internal conversation of like, okay, well, how dependent are you on it? What's it really mean? Can you take a break? Like all those kinds of conversations. If you're like, I can't take a break, well, maybe you're pretty addicted if you feel like you can't take a break at all. If you
Mhm.
can step away, maybe you have a healthy relationship with it. Those are
Yeah.
just the conversations to kind of cue into. Because as much as we talk about social media and getting clients and getting gigs and whatnot, number one, forget all of that. Number one is loving what you're doing and being content and feeling like, oh, life's pretty good. That's number
Right.
one for us, and trying to find ways to do that and play the game, like play it, but play it safely.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, because everything we're doing is in pursuit of happiness.
Hmm.
So why needlessly suffer?
Yeah. And we
So
create a lot of that.
with that, it's been a good episode. Let's end it off with a new TPM artwork
I love it.
submission. TPM artwork, for those who don't know, on Instagram, hashtag your photos. We just talked about taking a step away, but you know,
get back on Instagram and hashtag your photos, TPM artwork.
I see the irony. For those that are feeling good on the platform and are loving it right now and are in a good headspace and you don't need to be down in the dumps to do everything, the protocol we just talked about, to take a step away and do all the things. It's just good for you. I think it's good to look around, get back to having your feet on the earth and stuff. It's all good stuff. You don't need to be down and miserable to want to do that. I just wanted to say that. But
yeah, if
you'd like your photo on Instagram, yes, on Instagram, to be the cover art for one of our episodes that people can see on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and where a link to your profile page will go in the episode description, use the hashtag TPM artwork when you post your photos. I think that there's over 4,000 submissions, which is pretty cool.
Very cool.
And we'll do exactly what we're about to do. In addition to tagging your profile in the episode descriptions, we'll talk about it. And this is I've not recognized this submission yet. It's from @AdamDopey, and it's
really cool.
It is a rodent, clearly. It's called a Sereque. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
I've never heard of this, and it caught my eye. It looks like a wise rodent. It's very well framed, nice bokeh,
very smart.
Good depth of field. Mm-hmm. This rodent is closely related to guinea pigs and capybaras, sharing the same physical characteristics and behavior. So I'm picking this one because it's well composed. It's really cool, and there's a new animal that exists that I didn't know of. Yeah. So congratulations, Adam Dopey. And again, submit your photos using the hashtag TPM artwork. Link to Adam's photo and profile in the episode description. That's all I got for today. I'm feeling energized for my trip back. It's a very good reset. Hit the reset button. Manage my type A. Continue to have fun. Because that's the point of this all. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you, listeners.
I appreciate you too.
And until next time.
Take care.